Hi there everyone, and welcome to Paper Wish's weekly webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and today I'm excited to bring you some new luster polish colors plus fabulous dies from our friends at Creative Expressions. So today I want to show you 5 cutting dies. We have the Mallory frames and tags and the leafy frame. We also have 3 sentiment dies, a nice big happy birthday. We have You Are the Best, and There's Only One Like You. And today I'm also going to sneak in a stencil, and this one is called Basket Weave. Now we've got 6 new colors of luster polish to play with, and these work beautifully with the stencil and with the dies. So as you can see, we have a lot to explore today, and I'm so glad you're here. Come play with us. Let's take a closer look at our 6 new colors of luster polish. We have Glistening Gold, Plumtastic, Dazzling Denim, Snow and Ice, Razzmatazz, and Glitzy Green. So let's take a look at how to use these. So I'm going to roll aside all of my luster polish colors except for the Glitzy Green. Now, luster polish is a water-based, fast-drying medium with mica flakes in it. So as I'm tilting this, I think you can see the soft, shimmery shine in here, as well as that beautiful, rich color. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can apply luster polish to your surface. Probably the easiest one is using the sponge that's included in the packaging. So this is a really handy way to get your luster polish onto your paper cardstock. Now, when you first get your luster polish, you're going to need to remove a little tab of plastic here on the top of the lid. I use a pair of old scissors just to pop that right out, and then you can release the sponge on here. As you can see, my sponge is well used. Creative Expressions recommends that in between uses that you just mist the sponge as well as right into the jar of luster polish with a little bit of water to keep that nice and fresh. When you first get your luster polish, they do recommend that you first prime the sponge before you use it, wet it with a little bit of warm soapy water, and then press out that excess water and you're ready to go. So let's take a look at how to apply our luster polish. I'm going to bring in a piece of smooth white cardstock here and just grab that sponge. I'll dip the sponge right into that medium, and then I kind of scrape off any excess on the rim of the jar here. And then what I can do is simply apply the color right onto my cardstock. Take a look at how beautiful that color is, soft and shimmery. It's not a high glitter look, it's just a really soft, beautiful shine. Now this is it on white cardstock, but let's take a look at what we can do with some black cardstock. So again, I'm just going to dip my sponge right into that medium and then apply it to the cardstock. And I'm using kind of a circular motion with this. Take a look how pretty that is. And the two of these together give you 2 very different looks. Now, I'm showing you this on white and black, but don't forget the range of colors in between. So you could try cream cardstock, navy cardstock, brown cardstock. Really anything is fair game. So let's take a look at some of the other colors that we have here. I'll move aside these 2. Now this is what the Plumtastic will look like if you're putting it onto black and onto white. I just think this is absolutely stunning, and 2 very different looks. There's also the Glistening Gold, and that's going to give you a beautiful look on black and then also on white. We have the Snow and Ice, which looks gorgeous on black, gives a really true pearlescent effect on white, and can also be used for some other techniques, which I'm going to show you in today's webisode. We have the Dazzling Denim. Here it is on black and then on white. We've got the very fun Razzmatazz. Here it is on black and on white. Just look at the shine of that. And then back to our Glitzy Green, as you can see on here. Now, all of these swatches have just 1 coating of the luster polish, so don't forget you can actually intensify the color by adding more than 1 layer to your surface. Okay, now that we've seen the beautiful colors and how easy it is to apply luster polish, let's take a look at some other techniques. One handy trick is to use luster polish to create your own matting pieces. Now we all know how pricey pearlescent cardstock can be, so this is a great way to make your own. Now here I'm using Plumtastic onto some smooth white cardstock, and I'm going to create a mat that will match perfectly with my piece of pattern paper here. And this is from the Abundant Florals paper pack. So I'm going to set this aside and then just simply use my sponge to apply some of this beautiful color just right along the edges of my cardstock. Now I'm working onto a craft sheet, so I don't have to worry about damaging my table or anything as I'm doing this. Now because luster polish is a water-based medium, it also means that it's really easy to clean up. So it'll clean up easily from my craft sheet and my hands as well if I get any there. Now all I need to do is just apply the color straight on. I can add as much or as little as I want to. The other great thing about luster polish is that it dries really quickly. So I will have my beautiful mat in just a couple of minutes. So I just need to let that dry. While I let that dry, I'm just going to mop up a little bit of this excess color here. And then I'm going to bring back in my piece of pattern paper and take a look. I have a beautiful pearlescent shine around the outside edges there, and it matches perfectly with those beautiful purples in the pattern paper. Now we've been talking a lot about using luster polish on plain cardstock, but you can also use it onto pattern paper as well. And there are two luster polish colors that work really well with this technique. It's the glistening gold and the snow and ice. So first I'm going to take the snow and ice and just apply it right onto this beautiful floral pattern paper. Now, the snow and ice, as you can see, doesn't have a lot of pigment to it, so it's not like that beautiful Plumtastic, but this is going to give us a beautiful glistening white glow on our pattern paper. So I'm just applying this straight onto the paper itself. And I'm going to hold on to a little edge of it where I don't have any of that luster polish and tilt it a little bit so that you can see the shine and the sparkle on there. It's a beautiful way, quick and easy, to add just a little touch of shine to any of your pattern paper designs, really. And then when you start putting it onto your custom coordinated mat, you have a really soft pearlescent combination. Now, the other color I mentioned that works really well is the glistening gold. So I'll move aside these two and bring in another piece of paper from the Abundant Florals paper pack, and we'll apply a little bit of this to that design. Now, of course, this is going to give you some of that rich, beautiful golden color, but what I love about it is that it actually takes a very modern design and turns it into something that is aged and vintage and beautifully distressed. So I'll just apply a little bit more over this white flower here. Again, you can add as much or as little as you want, but I love how this has really just taken on an antique effect with that glistening gold. So do keep in mind your pattern papers or your cardstock can be used both to create some beautiful shine for your cards. I wanted to show you a fun technique of stenciling with luster polish, and so I've brought in my basket weave stencil. Now this is a 6" by 6" plastic stencil. It creates a really versatile design. Of course you can use it with lots of mediums, but I want to show it to you with this razzmatazz luster polish. So all I need to do is just add my stencil onto a piece of white cardstock. And I've just positioned this down here. Now you can hold it in place with your hand, but I like to use a little bit of masking tape just to secure things down a little bit more. You can use masking tape or of course washi tape or really whatever you have on hand. So I've got this secured in place. You can use a palette knife, you can use your finger, you can use lots of ways to apply the luster polish through the stencil, but I find that actually using the sponge does the trick just fine. Now you do want to make sure not to overload the sponge, so I always start with a light touch and just kind of tap that color in there and then sort of rub it in. So you can always add more, but I always find with stenciling a light touch maybe is the best way to begin. And you can start to see how beautiful that color is showing through here. And then you'll just keep going to finish off the design as much as you want to. So I'm really kind of going back and forth on some of those lines and making sure to get in all of the areas of that beautiful, versatile basket weave design. I think this is one of those classic patterns that's just great for any crafting room. It's one of those classic designs. Okay, so now I've got some of my luster polish on here. I'm just going to remove the tape from both sides, holding the stencil in place as I do this so that I can lift the stencil straight up rather than sliding it off. And then you can see I've got that design on there. So not only do I have the design itself, which is pretty cool, but it's also got that beautiful shimmer to it. So this is what it looks like on plain white cardstock, but you can, of course, also use your stencils and luster polish on pattern paper. So this is the Plumtastic luster polish on a piece of paper from the Abundant Florals collection, which I've then matted onto white cardstock and then onto some dark pattern paper that has been colored with the glitzy gold luster polish. So you get a little bit of shine going around the outside edges. And this is all on the front of my card. So then what I can do is add a focal element to it. So I've got my focal piece here ready to go. And this is a layered focal element. As you can see, the background that you see back here, that purple, is dark pattern paper that has been colored with snow and ice luster polish. The white frame is white cardstock with snow and ice, so it's got a little bit of shimmer to it. The sentiment is white cardstock with glistening gold, and the center area here is craft cardstock with glistening gold. And I'm using the frames from the Mallory Frames and Tags collection, and we'll take a closer look at that collection later in the webisode. Now I can add a bow on here, just quick and easy, but I can't resist. I've also got a little bird. This is from the Birds and Branches chipboard collection, and it makes a perfect little accent to so many different designs. Now this has also been colored with the glistening gold luster polish, and this is a great, quick and easy way to use your luster polish on hot off the press chipboard. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is the Birds and Branches chipboard collection. As you can see, all of these different elements here on the backing piece. And I've got one that's not in the packaging. But what I've done is left many of the elements right in that backing sheet. And I find that this makes it easier to color because you kind of have some extra space to hold on to. So I'm going to color this little bird with the glistening gold luster polish. I want to make sure though that I don't get this element here, so I'm just going to use some sticky notes to mask that off, just in case I get a little bit too much motion with my glistening gold. And again, all you need to do is just pick up some of that color onto the sponge, hold this down, and then simply apply it right onto that chipboard shape. So again, you've got some extra space to hold on to while you're doing that coloring. And as you can see, it's a good thing I had those sticky notes on there, because then I've got my perfectly colored little birdie. And then all I need to do is just pop him right out. Again, it will only take a few minutes to dry, and then you have a beautiful little birdie that you can have going in either direction, of course, because you can use the front or the back of the chipboard piece. So then I've got a really quick and easy color coordinated design. Spattering is one of my favorite ways to add additional texture and color to a card, and it's easy with luster polish. So I have a couple of tools on hand. I've got my palette knife, I've got a paintbrush, and I've got my glitzy green luster polish. So what I'm going to do is just use my palette knife to scoop out a little bit of that luster polish and spread it out just right onto my craft sheet. And then I'm going to add some water right next to my luster polish and give a good couple of spritzes here. And I'm going to use my palette knife to blend the two together so that I create a watery wash. And I prefer using the palette knife to do this blending rather than the paintbrush, I find that it just helps me create a smoother wash and then doesn't kind of clog up my paintbrush bristles. So then what I'll do, just another couple of spritzes here and pick up some of the water with my brush and then just dip that right into that watery, glitzy green. And then what I'm going to do is hold my brush perpendicular over my cardstock and just give a few firm taps here. And you can see that beautiful, shiny, gorgeous green design on here. Now what I like to do when I'm spattering is turn the cardstock every now and then so that I get a different and random pattern on my background. Now the more water you use, the bigger your splotches and dots will be. So do keep that in mind as you're adding your water on there. So this is what it will look like on that white cardstock. Now, if you're wondering what it would look like on black, I've got a piece that I've already done here, again with the glitzy green, and I think this looks just so pretty. So this is the spattering technique. Let me show you what this looks like on a card. I'm just going to mop up my excess luster polish here and then bring in a card that I've done that has this spattering technique on it. So you can see here, I think on the background, I've got some glistening gold spatters going on here. And this is on a piece of pattern paper from the Abundant Florals collection. Now you're probably also looking here on this card at the focal element. So this is the leafy frame die, and I've die cut this twice. I've die cut it once from white cardstock that I colored with snow and ice luster polish. So that gives me a piece that looks like this. So I've just applied that snow and ice all over a piece of plain white cardstock, and I've got that beautiful pearlescent effect. So I've die cut the leafy frame from that. I also die cut the leafy frame a second time from black cardstock, which I colored with razzmatazz luster polish, and cut it apart to do some layering on here. Of course, I've also got my sentiment, which has been die cut with twice to get a shadow effect on here. But let's take a closer look at that leafy frame die, because I think this is one of those dies that you really find very, very useful. So I'm going to move aside my card. I want to just get this last little bit of luster polish up from here, and then I'll bring in the packaging, as you can see. So this is the frame. It's about a 4 1/4 inch by 5 inch metal frame. So it's going to fit exactly onto the packaging on here. This gives you a great idea of what that will look like. And then, of course, on the inside, you've also got some project ideas, which is a great thing from Creative Expressions. And I love having the additional inspiration on here. So when I die cut the frame, I'm going to have a piece that looks like this. Now, if I want to do luster polish coloring on here, I can do it before I die cut. But in this case, I knew I only wanted to use one little portion. So I figured I'll die cut it from black and then just do my coloring on one area rather than the entire piece. So I've got my razzmatazz luster polish here. And the same process as before, I'm just going to use that handy sponge that comes in the packaging, dip that in, scrape off any excess. And then I'm just working right onto my craft sheet and apply a little bit of that color right on here. So I'm just kind of tapping it on. Again, you can add as much or as little as you want. I'm just going to do a light touch on here, and I think you can see how nicely that shines and how different it looks from the rest of the frame. So then all I need to do is just cut this apart, and I like to sort of cut it out from the main frame before trimming any excess from it. So I'll just chop this out, save this, of course. I'll have plans for that later. And then what I can do is trim off the excess of the frame and any additional little bits on here. And then I can simply tuck it onto my card, overlapping the snow and ice frame that I have on here, a ribbon, and my card is complete, starting from the spattering all the way to the layering. Now, you can use all of the pieces of your leafy frame to accent your card focals too. So let me show you this card. So again, this is using pattern papers from the Abundant Florals collection. I've got some Dazzles top and bottom on here. And then I've got my leafy frame piece tucked into one of the Mallory frame die cuts. And this is just a perfect size for a card focal. And I find that it just really helps to accent your message, which in this case is the die cut sentiment. This, of course, has been colored with the glitzy green, as has my little chipboard birdie on here. But to talk a little bit more about the Mallory Frames and Tags collection, you can see I've got the base piece, which is just a white cardstock, and then I've got white cardstock colored with the glistening gold, which I have added overlapping on here. And I think the whole piece just creates a really nice focal element. And the Mallory set is just perfect for so many different sentiments and accents. It's a great size and a great shape. So let's take a closer look at that Mallory collection. Now, the Mallory Frames and Tags collection has 6 dies with so many different creative combinations. As you can see here, it's a nesting style of die, which means that you can die cut the shapes together to create lots of different creative possibilities. And on the inside of the packaging here, Creative Expressions also gives you a couple of ideas just to get you started. But let's take a closer look at the basics of working with the Mallory Frames and Tags. And I'm sure more inspiration will come to you as you're getting a play with these. So you're going to begin with 2 kind of base pieces. And these are in a large and a small size. The large is going to measure 5.5 inches top to bottom by 3.5 inches going across at the widest part. Now with the smaller piece, it's 5 inches top to bottom and 3 inches going across here. Now the real fun starts when you begin doing your layering. And by layering, what I mean is die cutting a couple of dies together in your machine at one time. So if I start with this piece, as you can see, this is this shape here. So if I'm die cutting this from black cardstock, this is what I'm going to get. However, if I take another one of the dies from the collection, maybe this beautiful scallop design, and nest the 2 together, tape them onto my cardstock, and I use a little bit of masking tape or even washi tape will do the trick, run them through my die cutting machine, then I will get a piece that looks like this, and I'll just put it right on top of the black so that you can see that contrast. And immediately I have a beautiful focal element for my card or a pretty fun scrapbooking, either journaling or photo frame motif. Now I can put this onto the smaller piece. Of course, I can also layer it onto the larger piece as well. Now, if I decided that I wanted to cut out this window in here, got another die that will do the trick. Again, keep everything layered together, run it through your die cutting machine, and you'll have a piece that looks like this. So really beautiful option there as well. This one, of course, also looks really good if you put it onto the larger piece too. So you can start to see where the combinations can come together. Now, if I want to, I can remove the frame, the inside frame from here, and maybe take this beautiful centerpiece on here, run this through my die cutting machine, and I will have this gorgeous focal element on here. So then you can start to play with the different combinations on here. And of course, you can add even more. You can add a really pretty kind of dot frame motif on here. You can also die cut to the outside edge of that. You can do lots and lots of different combinations. And in fact, I've got a couple more that I want to show you here. So this piece, of course, has been die cut with the larger elements. I'll scoot that aside and show you how this looks. And then that really pretty perforated design, I think of it as perforation. It's that dot border that goes on here. Also really pretty. I think that also can be die cut just as a plain piece. And then you've got something really gorgeous. And of course, then you can start working on some of your layering possibilities here too. So maybe you decide to pop in a white centerpiece on here, and you can start to see how many different combinations that you've got with this. So you've also got these outline shapes, which you can decide to use or not. And in fact, you can also simply die cut them and use the negative space as well. So you could maybe take this and layer it up onto a contrasting cardstock. You've got this really useful little rectangle that could go in there, and you might decide to pop the centerpiece down on here as well. So that could make a really pretty contrasting motif, in addition to all of the other ideas that you can come up with using your Mallory frames and tags collection. So 6 dies and limitless combinations. I'm sure I have not thought of even half of the different things that you can create with this fun collection. One of my very favorite ways to use luster polish is to create a quick and easy background with a polka dot design. So here I'm going to show you with the glistening gold luster polish. So I'm just going to take advantage of the circular shape of that sponge. Simply dip this right into the color. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm scraping off any excess luster polish from around the outside edges of my sponge, and then just simply press gently and give a bit of a twist. And then I've got a really fun little circular shape on here. Now I can come back and add another and even create a really fun random polka dot design on here. So I can leave this with one color, but I think I'll add in a second one here. So let me get the dazzling denim, and I'm going to do exactly the same process. Now what I can also do is have the polka dots overlapping one another. So maybe I want to place this one here. Again, just simply press and give a bit of a twist. If you find that you need to add a little bit more color in there, it's quite easy to come back and reposition that and just repeat the process. And I like to have a little bit of white showing in there, and I'll show you why in just a second. So I'm going to add another dazzling denim circle in here, and then maybe a third one here right in the middle. So lots of different ways that you can create some fun color combinations with this. One card that I've created using this technique is a happy birthday design. And I think the circles work beautifully as a happy birthday, kind of a fun celebratory pattern. But many of you are probably also thinking that with the circular shape and that little bit of white that's showing through here, this almost looks a bit like a balloon. And I would suggest that you could always come in with a black pen and just draw a little tail of a balloon right onto your background piece as well if you wanted to, or leave them as circles as I've done here. Now I've also got some glistening gold spattering going on here, so I've got that going on the background. It's also overlapping some of my circles. I've also got a matting piece here, and this is done with the razzmatazz as we've seen earlier in the webisode, just getting those edges colorful to create a little bit of a border on here. I've got some die cut elements on here. These are, of course, some from the Creative Expressions collection from today, the Happy Birthday. This is black cardstock, and I applied a bit of glistening gold to that black cardstock before doing my die cutting. And I've also die cut the same elements from white cardstock and then sort of mounted them offset one on top of the other, and then popped this up with a little bit of foam tape. So it's got some extra dimension on here. And a simple bow, and I'm ready to go with a very quick and easy design using my luster polishes and a really simple technique for creating some polka dots, or if you'd like, balloons. Now we've been talking a lot about using luster polish colors full strength, but I have another technique that I want to share with you. And this one is using the Snow and Ice luster polish to tint some of our darker colors of luster polish. So when I first started playing with this technique, it really started opening up all the different kinds of possibilities that I could get with each one of my luster polish colors. So they're beautiful straight out of the jar, but it's great to have the option of creating lighter tones of each one of those. So I'm going to have my Snow and Ice, and I'm also going to get my glitzy green. Now I want to have on hand some of my chipboard elements. So you remember this is from the Birds and Branches collection. So what I'm going to do is just use my palette knife to get a little bit of my Snow and Ice. I'll put that right down onto my craft sheet. And then I'll get a little bit of the glistening gold. Now, of course, I don't need to have as much of this because I'm going to be doing some diluting here. So again, just working in with my palette knife to create a lighter shade of that glistening green. Now, the more snow and ice I add to my green, of course, the lighter the color will be. I'm going to clean off my palette knife quickly and just get a little bit more of that snow and ice and work that in so I can really create the exact shade that I want. Now I've got one element left here on my chipboard shape here, so I'm going to take my palette knife and just apply this right on top. Now you can use a brush if you want to do this. I'm using the palette knife simply because I've got it in my hand already. You can also use your fingers to apply this too. I've done that as well. And then just make sure I've got my leaf completely done. Let this dry and then I will be ready to use it. Now you might be wondering, can you use the leftover of your special mixture? And I wondered that too. So I got a jar, this used to hold embossing powder, and I just scraped back in the rest of my custom color of Lustre polish. And I did this last week and it's still quite fresh. So I think I might be in a pretty good shape to use this for future as well. I'm going to kind of clean off the rest of this because I want to bring in this card that we looked at earlier in the webisode, and also some chipboard shapes that I've colored with my custom color of glitzy green. So I've got that leaf shape, and then I also had these two here. And I just thought I could simply dress up my card a little bit more by tucking in some of these leaf elements here, just right onto that card. So you remember we also had the stenciling on here, and we've got our beautiful Mallory frame on there as well. But I think that adds just something extra to the card design as well. And then I had a little bow that I could add on to here too. Now, one other thing I want to show you with the lightning technique, I'll move aside this card for a minute. As we were looking at the stencils, this is the Plumtastic with that basket weave stencil done full strength. If I work in the snow and ice and create something lighter, almost a lavender, this is the difference that I can get. So if you start to think about, we've seen it with the glitzy green, and also now with the Plumtastic, think about the beautiful shades of dazzling denim you can get. So many different shades of razzmatazz. I think the options are just so wide open when you start playing with the different techniques that you can create with those Lustre polish colors and creating your own Lustre polish colors. So with this last card, I think you can see how many different effects you can create with Lustre polish, plus the dies and the stencil from Creative Expressions. I suspect you're going to come up with even more ideas too, and I can't wait to see them. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. Thank you so much for watching. And a big thank you for being a part of the Paper Wishes family. We are really so very glad you're here with us. Do be sure to leave a comment because we love to hear what you think too. Each item that you see today can be purchased separately, and you can see those items below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.